to the show, Tori. I am so glad to have you here today. How are you doing?
I am phenomenal, absolutely incredible, and I am excited to be here on the show. I really appreciate the opportunity.
I absolutely love having guests on. It is something that just fills my heart with joy, and especially because I get to interview people from around the globe, which means that I get to hear beautiful accents. I absolutely love a good accent, and yours is lovely. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, thank you. I am too. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, so before we start into the topic of the day, I would love for my audience to get to know you a little bit better, find out a little bit about your history and your background, because you've got a fantastic story to tell. So please do let us know a little bit more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on the show here with you. My name is Torrey. I am interesting enough. I'm from America, from Oklahoma, actually. And so, my story begins really, it kind of begins in high school. My senior year of high school, I found out that I wasn't graduating. The week of graduation, I found out I wasn't graduating from high school, ready to get out of school, ready to start life. I remember being extremely excited, but had this extreme anxiety all at the same time because I'm about to graduate and be out on my own. And I had this anxiety because I'm about to graduate and be out on my own. So,
Double-edged sword.
yes, but that week of graduations when I found out that I wasn't going to graduate. And I remember walking into the counselor's office trying to figure out what was going on. And the counselor just looked at me and said, "You're not graduating." And I'm like, oh my goodness. Wow. And I remember for much of my beginning part of my adult life, just being stuck. I always tell people I was stuck at this desk because that's where I heard the words, "You're not graduating." So I was stuck there for much of my life, stuck feeling like a failure, feeling like I wouldn't accomplish anything, like I couldn't go anywhere. And I remember being that way until I heard this statement from an incredible speaker by the name of Dr. Miles Monroe. He said, "The greatest tragedy of life is not death. The greatest tragedy of life is life without purpose." And when I heard that statement, I knew my issue for my life was not that I didn't graduate. It was not that I didn't go to some college and all that kind of stuff. It was the fact that I didn't know my purpose. So I became irrationally passionate about finding my purpose, and that's what I did. And so now I've gone from a GED to a global world traveler. I travel around the world raising and teaching leaders and inspiring people, empowering people, and to now going from hearing the words "you're not graduating" to now holding a doctorate in theology and one coming in ministry. So that's been my story. My whole passion in life is to help people get unstuck, shift from your now to your next. That's who I am, and that's what I'm passionate about.
I love that. And I love the way you say that, from your now to your next. I really,
Mhm,
really like that sort of phrasing.
mhm,
And it's really good that you're coming on, because we have been speaking a lot on the podcast recently about work-life balance and the fact that that's a myth, and that you need to find your why and let your vision change with that to let your why happen. And I
mhm,
think what you're talking about there, of like, holding on to that vision of, you get to this age and you graduate, and then you go to college, and then you do
mhm,
this, and that's kind of the vision that we're fed as children. This is what is we're going to do. And it's funny that you had that experience, because I know in America you graduate at 18 from high school, right?
yeah. Mhm.
In the UK it's 16, and now it's
Oh, wow.
shifted in the last few years that you have to stay in full-time education until you're 18, and
Mm,
then you go off to university. But back when I was at school, it was
mm,
16, you could leave and go out into the workplace and you could finish. And, I had something that happened in my life. In my first year of sixth form, which is our college, we do 2 years, 16 to 18 in college. And, I lost my boyfriend and my best friend in one fell swoop. You can imagine what happened.
mm,
And my whole world fell apart. I had this very strong conviction and vision of my life and what it was going to look like. I'd been building it since I was 7 years old. I got my first, like, I want to be a teacher at 7 years old, and it grew. The vision grew from there. And I was like, and this is how I'm going to buy a house, and this is when I'm going to get married. And this became my mantra to get me through my GCSEs, which is our first sort of lot of exams before I went on to do my A-levels. And, you know, that was my strict vision. And it all came crashing down when I was 16 and a half. And yeah, my life fell apart for a few years, and I was very, very lost and in a very, very dark place. So I can completely empathize with, you know, finding out that the vision that you had set for yourself had been taken away from you. So that's a lot. That's very heavy for a start. The start of our podcast. We're gonna lift it. We're gonna lift it. We're gonna bring it back to our next. We're gonna lift it. It's all good. So today I wanted us to sort of focus on mental barriers that we put in place for us to be able to get to our next. And I thought that we could talk about that because I think that's something that you would be very good to guide us on. So I thought if we could start with, what are mental barriers and how might they manifest? Because I think as much as we sort of say these things are keeping us stuck, we don't necessarily realize the barrier that's actually keeping us stuck. We feed ourselves all these stories. So talk to us a little bit about mental barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing. Everyone has what's called a set point. They have a mental set point or even a mindset. But if you think about this set point, this is the place where your life has been set. In other words, it could be a financial set point. Let's say it's, you know, $40,000 US dollars a year. And if you're set there, then that's as far as you can go. Some people, that's a weight. So whatever that weight is that a person may have, and they're set there, meaning that my mind is just set. So it really doesn't matter how far you go. So for instance, you may win the lottery, right? And win millions of dollars. The problem is you're always going to default back to that set point. That's why a person can lose weight, you know, go on a diet, do a thing for, you know, 6 months, lose all this weight, get in tip-top shape. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, they're back in the same place, because that's the mental set point. That's the barrier that has to be broken in the mind. So I always say this: your mind can either be a bridge or a barrier. It could be a bridge that can take you to the next level, or it can be a barrier that's stopping you. But it's always going to be either a bridge or a barrier. So that set point is really where you default, or that barrier is where you default. It's the thing that I just can't seem to get past this. No matter what I do, I can't get past this. And that's the thing that has to break so that you can get to that next level.
I love that. I love that. Okay. So we will talk about breaking the barriers in a little bit, but let's say we've already broken them. What's the impact to our lives if we can shift these barriers and break these barriers?
Yeah, I mean, so that's a big question, because it could be different for everyone.
Yeah.
So it all depends on what is your dreams, what is your goals. Because here's the fact that I know that everyone that's watching this has some type of vision, some type of dream, some type of idea. Everyone is constantly in a state of saying it's got to be more than this, whatever your this is. Maybe you're working a job and you go to the office every day and you're like, it's got to be more than this. It's got to be something else. Or you're an entrepreneur and maybe you're struggling through the entrepreneur journey and you're making so much money, a certain amount of money, but you're still saying it's got to be more than this. And so breaking that barrier could mean breaking to the next financial goal. It could mean breaking into a relationship that you've been desiring. It could mean your business exploding and going to that next level and taking you to multiple 6, 7, 8-figure incomes. It could mean so much to so many people. It all depends on what's in you. It depends on what your passion is. It depends on what your vision is. So the importance of you breaking these barriers has everything to do with you getting to that next thing that takes your life to the next level. Also, it could mean legacy. Like this could be about generations. The reason I have to break this barrier is because I want to set the next generation up for success. So that's why I can't allow this thing to keep holding me back, because somebody else is coming after me and I got to set the course for them. I got to pave the way for them. And that's why it's so important to break these barriers. So you think about that. If you can break the barriers in your life, you can break the barriers in your family. You could break the barriers in those that are come after you. Generations, your children's children will break barriers because you broke barriers.
Oh, I love that. And I think like, you know, those 2 points that you've made there, well, there was more than two, but the set point, I feel that, especially with my weight, we won't go into it, but yeah, I completely, like, it's like a default. It's a mechanism that just takes you back to that same place. And that is a barrier that I feel like I need to break for my generation, for the next generation. And having that, you know, going back to my story a little bit, where I said, you know, I didn't end up going to university when I wanted to. I went back when I was 29 and I graduated and got my degree as a mature student. And I had a 12-year-old by the end of that degree. You know, she was 12 years old and she got to see that. And I was the first person in my mum's family, you know, not necessarily in our extended family, but from her mum, blah, blah, blah. I was the first one to go to university, and that created an opening, the potential, the possibility. And, you know, university isn't for everyone and it's not everybody's path, but I didn't want my daughter to ever feel like she couldn't. And she got to see me do that. She got to come to my graduation and she was so proud of me, and it just opened her mind to the possibility, which I thought was a really fantastic way of being able to do that. So I love how you're kind of saying that the impact of breaking those barriers, it's not just in our own lives, it can be so much more, so much more.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. And that's the thing that you have to realize. Like you talk about that with your daughter was able to see you. It's incredible. My kids, as I received my PhD, my kids were there at the graduation. They were able to see. I have a my spread of kids. The age range is unique. I have a 27-year-old. I have a 22-year-old. And then I have a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Oh my goodness. You do not look old enough to have a 27-year-old. My daughter is 22. And when she got to about 12, I was like, that's it. I can't have any more kids. The age gap would be too much. I'll be starting again. I can't do it.
I know. It was crazy, but you know, it happened.
It happened. They were meant to be.
Yeah. But it was great that they got to see that moment. You know, because like you said, you know, now they can see what's possible from me. And so that's a big deal. That's, again, why breaking these barriers are so important.
Yeah. And I think it lends itself to our bigger why. Like I was talking, well, probably about a month ago or so on the podcast about the work-life balance and finding your why and allowing your vision to, you know, change. You know, we don't have to sort of stick with that one vision. If we can find our why, and our why has got to be bigger. It's got to be bigger than us. It's got to be bigger than I want this much money in my bank account. There is a bigger why for you out there. And that's where your family comes in, and the generations and the legacy part of it. And that's, it can be a lot of pressure. Like, oh gosh, I've got to break these barriers because, you know, otherwise in 100 years time, my great grandchildren are still going to be going through this sort of thing. But I think it's so important to the development and improvement of the human race to keep making those little changes. So how do we identify the barriers in our lives? You know, we're saying about this set point, and for me, that kind of made me realize, okay, there are a couple of areas in my life where I can see the set point. But if we don't sort of see those, how does it show up? How could we go, oh, okay, that might actually be a barrier for me?
Yeah, one of the ways, first of all, would be when it starts making you uncomfortable. So what I mean is you now have a dream, you have a vision, and you start going for that thing. You're saying, you know what, I'm gonna pursue this. And then the moment you start pursuing it, you get very uncomfortable, even fearful about it. It terrified. Bob Proctor called it the terror barrier. That terror barrier starts coming up. So it's like, I'm going after it, and it's like, oh gosh, I don't know if I could do it. You know, right there, you have a barrier. That is a key identifier, that there's a barrier right there. Because the fact is this, if you do it with ease, it's not a barrier. You know, if you just step out and just do it, it's not a barrier. But the moment I'm pursuing something and there's a fear that almost paralyzes me, almost stops me from going for it, then I know at that point I've reached a barrier that I have to break, or I'm not going to get to that next level. So that's generally what happens. No matter what you're doing, if you're trying to go to the next level, that uncomfortable feeling, that fearful feeling comes up and literally tries to say, hey, go back to your comfort zone. Why are you trying to do this? Why do you want a next level? Why do you want more income? Why do you want to start a business? Why do you want to do that? Go back, lay down, go to bed. And that's generally how you know.
Oh gosh, that's really good actually, because that links into a conversation that I had a couple of weeks back with Alison Wheeler, where she was talking about the voice. It was just trying to keep you safe. You know, it's a safety mechanism in our bodies. You know, this is the vision, that this is what we talked about. This is what we know and what's comfortable. And why are you trying to move past that? That's going to cause us an issue. So I think that's really good. I love that. Just go lay down, take a break. It's fine.
Let's go. Well, yeah, that's absolutely right. You know, internally, we want to be safe, and anything that attempts to disrupt that safety, we're like, nah, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. And when it comes to our barriers and our mindset in general, I think a lot of it is learn. And what you said there just sort of sparked in me this, how many barriers could we break? Because like you said, look, there's a saying, new level, new devil. And I think what you just said there was, you break this barrier and then you move on to the next goal and the next goal and the next goal. And there are going to be, you know, you could say there's generational barriers, things that, you know, your parents wouldn't go to, blue collar, working, go out, do your job, earn your basic wage and go home, and that is the set point. And now we've kind of breaking out of that in this generation. We're going, no, actually I can work for myself, and I can have this and I can have that. And okay, so we've broken that first barrier there of going, we don't have to do what our parents did, we can do something different. But we can break so many other barriers that weren't barriers for our parents. That didn't even occur to them, because they stopped at the first thing. They went to, and they did their job, and they were happy in just, you know, going through the motions of life. And we're sitting here going, actually, no, we want more. And we could stop there. And, you know, then our kids come up and they go, no, we know we can have more. But then they get stuck at the next level. And we have the opportunity to break through so many barriers to give them an even better start. So they're starting, like, rather than one step ahead of their parents, they could start 5 steps ahead of the parents, which is an amazing thought.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's when you start talking about generational, there's a saying that says, leave an inheritance for your children's children, right? So being able to create that momentum even for the next generation to keep going. When you talk about why, there are 3 things I always talk about when I talk about understanding your why. There are 3 levels of why. Number 1 is your personal why. So whenever you're pursuing something, why is this personal to you? What makes this personal? I've always heard your why should make you cry, right? So why is this personal? What is it? Is it because of my children? Is it because of my parents? I want to take care of them in their older age. What is that personal why? Why is this personal for you to pursue this? The second is your generational why. And what I mean by that is, what mark do you want to leave on your generation? You're here for a purpose. You're here for such a time as this. There's a reason why you exist in this time. There's a reason why you didn't exist 100 years ago. You're here now. What is the mark you're going to leave on your generation? And then what contribution are you making to your generation? And then the third one is your legacy why. That's really what you're leaving behind, or what people will remember you by. So the reason I'm doing this is because I know I'm born, but so it means I have an entry date, but we all have an exit date. And the fact is, none of us know when that exit date is. So every day of my life, I'm living to leave something behind that people can remember me by, and not just remember me, but they can remember how I impacted them. They can remember how I influenced them, how I empowered them. Something that really, I like to say it this way, something that never dies, that is always living inside of somebody else. And when you put those 3 levels of why in place, it really helps you to continue to pursue. It gives you a fire to go after the thing that you really desire to have.
I love that. I love those 3 whys. And I'll tell you why I love them, because none of them were, I want to make loads of money.
Right.
That's not going to make you cry. That's not a personal why that's going to make you cry. And
Exactly.
It's not something that's going to make a difference to your generation. I mean, possibly you could take that money, you could do something good and make a generational impact, but it's not really where it's at. And that legacy one, you see it nowadays with all the people that have inherited from their parents and haven't had to work a day in their life. Well, I don't want that for my kids. I don't. I want them to understand that you got to work for things if you want to feel good about them. You don't feel good about just taking money from your parents, whatever glory it gives you in the moment. It's not going to turn around and be something that you'll look back on your life and go, wow, that was a great life. I didn't do anything. I love the fact that they were very much focused on what we can do and that feeling inside that we can create. Fantastic. So one of the things that I think it's important to talk about is where we come across these barriers. Oftentimes it's a block that we just can't shift by ourselves. Now, maybe we can. Maybe there are times where, we can recognize it and make a shift and move on from it. But I think a lot of times we just kind of get stuck and we're almost like fighting ourselves because we want to get past it. For me personally, I want to be successful in my business, but there's a barrier that just keeps me not just, just want to get over the top of that mountain and it'll all be easier. At what point do you think people need to look at getting professional help with their blocks, and what kind of help should we be looking at? Because I don't want people going out there wasting money on loads of different gurus that are going to promise them the world. What is it we're looking for in somebody to help us with these barriers?
Yeah. So, well, you think about, first of all, if you're dealing with past issues, that's trauma and hurt and things like that, that's when you may want to look into professional help in terms of therapy. Nothing wrong with therapy at all. So, there's certain, people that are trained to help you get over past traumas, to get, to really work through the healing process.
Yeah.
And so that's necessary sometimes. And then there's opportunities also to get someone that can deal with your future, because there's one level therapist that will deal with your past, but then there are people, sometimes coaches, that can deal with your future. And so you got to determine, where are you? Do I need to deal with this internal pain first? Do I need to get past these things, these abuses or whatever happened in my life? Do I need to get past that? So I got to do that work. Okay, now I've done some work there. I'm ready to go ahead and break into my future. So that coaching, mentorship, finding people that you can model after, and just start looking at. I always say this: exposure expands experience. So sometimes the reason you can't break the barrier is because you haven't been exposed to anything greater. And so getting into rooms where you're being exposed to something that takes your life, that expands your mind. They say once you expand your mind, it can never go back to the place it once was. So getting into places where you can start hearing conversations that are different, right? Because if you're hearing conversations about being broke, about being sick, about being the world's going crazy and nothing great is happening and nobody's making money and everybody, if you're hearing those conversations, it's going to feed that barrier that you have. But when you start hearing conversations that are stretching you and saying, you know what, you can make it. People are doing great things. People are becoming millionaires every day, whatever your thing is. When you start hearing those goals, your mind now, your unconscious mind is now getting new information. I call it mental reprogramming. So now you're getting this mental reprogramming happening, and you're starting to say, you know what, maybe something else is possible. Maybe something else can happen because I'm hearing a different conversation. So that's really the thing you got to think about when it comes to how do I break these barriers, or where do I need to go? Who do I need to connect with to break those barriers? I think that's really huge in that aspect of things.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like having the twofold there. It's not just, go and get therapy and that'll fix everything, because I think, I'm a complete believer in therapy myself, and I've done some therapy in the past. And I think it's really important for people to realize that it's not one size fits all with therapy. If you've tried it and it didn't work, try something else. There are so many different types, and the therapist is really, really important. Like, I've had a couple of therapists in the past and I just did not get on with them. So the relationship wasn't there, the trust wasn't built, and the work didn't work because of that. So I think it's really important that you don't think that you can just go to one therapy session with one person and it's going to fix everything in a second, and then you can move on to the next.
Right.
And then I like the fact that you said you need to do that, and then you can go and look for the business coaches and the people that can mentor you and take you forward. And I think it's really important to have mentors and coaches in your life. I'd love to know, for you, who has been a really influential person in your life that you've gone, this is like, whether they've actually physically spoken to you, helped you, or whether it's just been somebody that you've watched from afar and gone, that is a person that I would like to be like.
Yeah. So there have been several people. One is a guy by the name of Dr. Miles Monroe. He from the Bahamas, passed away several years ago. What was great about him is that he's a preacher, because I'm also a preacher. So he's a preacher and in the marketplace and doing marketplace business. And so that's kind of a thing that I kind of model, is that I'm not just in the ministry, but I'm also in the marketplace. And so Dr. Miles Monroe was a huge impact on my life, really, in discovering my purpose and my leadership. It was really huge in that area. And then there's been several other, people that kind of mentor me in the same direction. And then one of the ones now is Dr. Myron Golden is a huge influence and impact for me now. That's who I kind of coach by. I listen to consistently, and even model business practices after him and things like that. So that's who it is right now.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's really important that you don't have to actually have conversations with these people. Like, I did a podcast 2 years ago where I talked about the 5 people that you surround yourself with, and some of my 5 people were people that I didn't even know in real life. Like, I've never had a one-to-one conversation with them. One of them was Amy Porterfield. I was just like, I listen to her podcast all the time. If she goes live on Facebook, I'm there. I follow her on social media. She is in my world, because I look at her and I go, that's the kind of business person I want to be like. So she's part of my top 5 that I spend the people I spend the most time with. Somebody I don't even talk to. And then I got to speak to her last year, which was absolutely amazing. And she came on the podcast, which was brilliant. But they don't have to be people that in the real world. They don't have to have a conversation with you for you to feel mentored by them, if they've got that presence online that you can follow and get information from. And like you said, that gaining more wisdom and learning more. And I love that idea of, once the brain is set free, you can't stuff it back in the body.
Right. You can't unsee once you see it.
Yeah. I get these visuals when people say stuff, and I just imagine your brain go, it's a party up in here.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh gosh, that was really good. Thank you so much for that. I really wanted to give you a chance to talk about your mindset reset course, and let us know what that's all about, because I think again these are stepping stones to a bigger action. You know, getting
Mhm.
the therapy, getting the mentors, having a coach, doing courses, learning, expanding. So tell us a little bit about your course and what people can find inside.
Yes, absolutely. So the mindset reset is all about helping you break these barriers. It's about giving you the tools to
Mm.
help you break the barriers. So I go through 4 stages. I go through the first, we do a mental reprogramming. So, or we call it our mindset reprogramming. So that's where we reprogram all of the negative things that you picked up from childhood, you picked up from society, you picked up from whatever. We deal with the reprogramming because our minds are always programmed by
Mm.
something. And then we do the re-imaging the mind. So that's important because we all have some sort of self-image. So that self-image is a mental image. So we got to re-image our mind and take on the right image and the right being so that we can become the person that can do the thing that we desire. And then number 3 is we reframe the mind. That's dealing with the thought process. What is the thought process that you have? We're going to reframe that and give you a new framework of thinking. And then the 4th thing is renew the mind. Renewing the mind is important, which is a continual process that you have to know how to constantly go through the renewing of the mind. There's a saying that says, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of the mind. So transformation is directly connected with renewing your mind. So we show you how to do all that in the mindset reset course. It's a 4-week course that we go through that, you know, we give you the tools, the exercises, what you need to do, how you can do it. And if you put it in place, you'll break some barriers and your life will go to the next level.
Mm.
And so we do those about every quarter is when I do them.
And they're live, are they?
They are live.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love that. Oh, I love a
Yeah.
live course. No, that's so good. I am I am so done with courses that are self-paced courses. And I think people are a bit exhausted with them, to be honest with you. There is something different when you can actually have a real-time experience with
Yeah.
somebody who is delivering this stuff. And I think this is something that is really important, especially when you're looking at breaking barriers. It's like I said earlier, it's not something you can necessarily do on your own. So, you know, a self-paced course is great and it's going to open your mind. You're going to learn new things. You'll be able to take away something. But that implementation, I think, is really hard. And one of the other things that I have to say is that this is open to everybody and everybody can do it. The difference is the people that are willing to put the work in to do it. And that's where the
Absolutely.
transformation happens.
100%. Yes.
Love it. Thank you so much for today, Torrey. I really appreciate you coming on. I will link to the course details in the show notes, guys, so you can head over and you can find out more about Torrey. Before we go, I have a quick fire round that I do with my guests just to get to know a little bit of stuff about you that we might not have learned through the show. So if you're up for it, we could do those questions.
Yes, let's go.
Okay, so the first one is, what is the book that made the most impact on your life?
Besides the Bible, it would be a book called The Burden of Freedom by Dr. Miles Monroe.
Love that. And I was going to say, I would have been shocked if you hadn't said the Bible. A pastor that doesn't say the Bible, that would be wrong. And the next one is, what is your go-to snack if you're in a hurry?
Hershey's bar with peanuts in it, or nuts, almonds. That's it.
That's good.
Yes.
That gives you your protein, doesn't it?
Yes.
I love that. And what is your ultimate me time thing to do? What do you do that you love to do for yourself?
Yeah, so I'm also a martial artist. So my ultimate me time is going to the gym and punching the bag. So
I love that.
That's it for me.
I love that. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Where can people find you? Where do you hang out the most, Torrey?
Instagram and Facebook are where they can find me the most. So Instagram at Torrey.Montgomery, and Facebook is the same thing, Torrey.Montgomery. So that's
fabulous.
I'm actually on TikTok too now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, same thing. I did, yeah.
Awesome. I will put those links in the show notes for you guys. So do go ahead and share, especially on Instagram. You know, it's my favorite place to hang out. Tag Torrey, tag me, share this episode. Let me know what your biggest takeaway is. And I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for today, Torrey.
Thank you. Again, it was such an honor to be on the show. Thank you so much.